Hey you guys, it's just like 6 a.m. here, 6:14 a.m. Central, and getting up and seeing two guys still going. I don't know how far Greg made it, but I'm assuming that he made it to 50 million and won a shirt. I know Dane made it to 54 million. Hey you guys. Ooh, let me turn that feed off. 6 a.m. here. Alright, so Dane sent an email that he made it to 54 million and his arms were killing him. Hey, is that Xander or Neo out there? So, yeah, it's still dark here. Midwest won't be light for a while. You can kind of see a little bit of window. It's black out there. Oh, Jennifer, hey, did you find that shirt that I gave Jace when we were in the studio? But anyway, this is much like it was in 1982 in the arcades, when 83 also, when kids were staying up all night at the arcades. The arcade owners were either trusting them in the store, locked in all night, or the arcade owners would stay up. And it would be a long night for these players. You know, they're mentally in the zone, especially a game like Robotron. And this is physically taxing. I keep referencing Jace talking about esports. Well, this is one of the games that is a physical endeavor. It's not just pushing some buttons. They are using upper body strength, nonstop. I don't know how many calories they'd be burning. And David Gomez's wife, Nan, maybe could fill in what David does for nutrition or bathroom breaks, but this is a physical gauntlet.
Yeah.
There are a few games out there that require physical strength to play, but this is about the granddaddy. So anyway, in these arcades, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids would be playing all night in the arcade to prove something. This new age of electronic warriors, before anybody even had a label for what was going on, the kids were already embracing the pop culture of it. And in the middle of the night, Nan can tell you, it feels like a long, empty stretch of highway in the desert. It's a long haul. So 6 a.m. as the sun would be getting ready to come up was kind of an exciting time because you actually survived that valley, that dark lull, almost valley of death, I guess, where you don't know if you can keep going. But I'm sure that these players are probably feeling a bit energized. Now, David has the benefit of being in the Midwest, so he's further east in the world. Ken is 2 hours later, so I guess it's probably still middle of the night to Ken. But David surely is getting that extra burst. So 100 million point gauntlet. Once again, the concept of esports. This was an actual gauntlet to them. Now, can you reach the 100 million point finish line? It's very similar to an endurance runner who would be running 100 miles, which would encompass a 24-hour race. At points they're probably even crawling on that trip, but they have to keep going. So a lot of parallels here with what's going on in Robotron. Nan, David's wife, says he's had 2 bathroom breaks and eaten only 2 apples. So he's doing it like a runner. He's keeping on the road. Now there is a little bit of a bragging right going on. It is true that Robotron is a personal challenge. It's a personal challenge against you and the game code, which was designed by 2 brilliant programming maestros who have a historical legacy of their own. But there's also a challenge between these 2 players happening, because this is the debut of the brand new, what's called the tie-dye ROM set. You can read about it out there. It's referenced all over the place. But Larry DeMar made some updates to the Robotron code specifically for people that wanted to play long games. It's valid kids code coming right from the original programmers. But one of these 2 players is going to be the first person ever in history to have rolled the score over at 100 million points on the tie-dye ROM set. Right now it's looking like Ken is at 89.6 million. I'll have to click on David's feed here and see what his says. Oh my, he's at 91 million. So it looks like he's power cruising. It must be where she's referencing. He's only taking some breaks, a few breaks. So normally I think the players would try to take 4-minute breaks on a regular interval while watching their lives, but I think they're going all out. They're sprinting. So you're not seeing 2 players here just lagging along, like crawling, just trying to make the 100 million. These guys are sprinting right now in this competition. Only one of them will be the Neil Armstrong. The other one's going to end up being Buzz Aldrin, which is both hugely important. And that's a reference to where Jace has talked about the elite significance of some of these competitions, where less people have completed some of these video game challenges than people have been on the moon. Humans have been on the moon. And this is one of those cases. No one has ever rolled the score or played the new tie-dye ROM set for 23, 24 hours to roll the score. One of these 2 will do it. And they'll both go down in the history and the legacy of this game as, elite. These two people made the Gauntlet challenge on Tie-Dye-ROM set. And this is also, I don't know how many people are watching really out there. Oh, Stephen Boyer, ex-Twin Galaxies ref, major cheerleader of classic gaming, says they can shoot for 200 million. I do believe that Ken made a statement that he intends on trying to play to 48 hours. I think that he probably has the endurance, probably as David Gomez does too. So you might see that. We'll see. But the first goal is who hits 100 million first for the bragging rights. But they will both be in the legacy of this game. And the neat thing about classic gaming, it's something that has kind of consolidated. You've seen it in the Donkey Kong community. These long-term players and these really dedicated players that like a specific game and really dedicate their attention to understanding all the dynamics and the history of a game, they band together through social media and these online avenues like forums, and it creates these little groupings. So there are communities and there are histories in these communities and documentation for these various games. So when you have an event like this happening, this actually will be recorded. And I'm not talking about like CNN picking up the story or whomever out there, you know, in the old manners that you had to be in a magazine to be legitimate. There's all this immediate online media that reaches the whole planet, and these communities embrace that. So
that's kind of what I was thinking.
These things will be documented. And the neat thing is that Jace Hall's Twin Galaxies, like with Jen here doing the Twin Galaxies live media aspect of Twin Galaxies, this is also being embraced on a larger level than Twin Galaxies has ever imagined to function. It's pretty impressive. One of the original Twin Galaxies arcade employees from Ottumwa, you know, in the 82 to 84 range, and then I was away for quite a while, but there have been a lot of advancements and media events for Twin Galaxies. There was even the prime time, that's incredible stuff. But what's happening right now, what you guys are seeing with this Twin Galaxies Live, is a bigger media presence than has ever occurred in the Twin Galaxies history. And so you are not only going to probably see things like Robotron or Donkey Kong or Mario Brothers represented, you're going to see all the new gaming. You know, the kids nowadays, the kids in early grade school, they're the Minecraft generation. Just like I'm 46, my generation was the Atari 2600 generation after a short stint with Pong and the early things, the handhelds like the Simons and the other little handheld games, the Mattel football games. But I think you'd probably call us the Atari 2600 generation. I think the next group that's coming up in early grade school, I think they're the Minecraft generation. But there's a lot of stuff going on, and it will continue to morph. But it's a neat thing because now there's an infrastructure to handle whatever history changes.
Jerry,
so,
are you in here?
Robotron is not the definition of classic gaming in its entirety, nor is it the definition of electronic sports or video gaming. But it's part of that spectrum, and it's an early part of the spectrum. So this is all pretty exciting. I mean, it's like 6:25 in the morning, and I'm getting up and sitting out here in the cold back porch, talking to whomever around the planet. Robbie Lakeman, heck, go for 300 million. Robbie, I actually was around you out there in Banning that, but it was such a crazy event I didn't really get a chance to talk to you. So anyway, I saw you over there in the area where Richie Knuckles was doing the events, but sorry we didn't get to talk. But anyway, I'm fully aware of your elite gaming skills. So there's one of those people that is one of the young guys coming along who's really embraced the classic stuff, even though maybe they weren't in arcades in 1982, or maybe not born. I don't even know how old you are, Robbie. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on, and now there is a good infrastructure for handling it. Actually, the Donkey Kong forum is one of those places that I was kind of thinking of. So if you're into anything in the culture of Mario, check out that Donkey Kong forum. There are a lot of elite players there. There are the famous documentary folks like Hank Chin, and Billy's not online in anything, but I think that he keeps track of that through some of his acquaintances. We've got Robbie, who I think, are you the highest score in Donkey Kong, Robbie? Is that true? The arcade score? Have you reached the highest? Then Maximum Steve, I know that is Stephen Boyer's buddy, Steve Pleasouth, who I haven't had the privilege to meet, but you were in Florida, and I'm actually the person behind the scenes that organized all those trading cards, that huge amount of trading cards that went out there. So I have seen you work through that, and plus I watched your videos, and plus I voted on your world record score at Twin Galaxies. One of the silent voters out there. It'd be curious to know from Jen. I'm sure Jen knows behind the scenes. She could tell us maybe what kind of voting. I think that the voting might be in the multi-thousands on some of those events. There are only a few people that really vocalize through text in the written form there, but I think the background voting is monstrous at Twin Galaxies now. I think us group of classic gamers would be surprised if we really knew what kind of numbers were happening. I think it's far bigger what's happening right now than the imaginations of the classic gaming group could imagine. So, Mr. Commentator, I'm actually Mark Hoff. I was a Twin Galaxies arcade employee in 82 to 84. I'm a Tumwa native. I showed up at Twin Galaxies. Well, everybody showed up around the time of the Life magazine photo shoot. You know, it's a small town. That was big news that Walter had a big time thing going on. I worked on the scoreboard, as part of what I did. I started working there to do the That's Incredible scoreboard. So myself, a professional expert that worked at Radio Shack, and two other kids ended up putting that scoreboard process together that they actually used in Ottumwa for the video game Olympics. And you see that on the That's Incredible. If you watch that back, and they show some clips which were probably taken from our local news station, but that stuff made it on national media. So when you see the little digitized pictures of the game names on the old TV monitors, I think we maybe had some stuck in the old scoreboard in the background. I did a lot of the graphics in that particular event. There was database stuff going on, but that was mostly handled by another person. And then tying that together was actually a very primitive local area network. The guy had military experience from Radio Shack, and he soldered together a coaxial backbone and tied a bunch of Radio Shack color computers together. So if you look back on the concept of internets and connecting computers, even though that was the fledgling bulletin board era, Twin Galaxies had a homebrew network going on. We didn't really know what we were doing. We were not savants or geniuses. Walter has a way of bringing people into projects. It's like, well, I want to do this, I envision this, and we had no idea how to do it, but it all came together somehow. We stayed up, on the weekends all night. In fact, Walter did an award ceremony, I don't know, maybe a couple years ago. It was for that Icon event, one of the first ones. My mom was in the crowd, and Walter was pontificating about this whole experience and about what us kids did. And my mom made a point that she said, we need to be thankful for letting our kids stay up all night doing these crazy projects. Because that's what it was back then. There was no history yet of what video games were or why these things would be significant. We were just doing projects that were interesting, and coin-op games were pop culture. It had drawn us in. Now, years later, we can see just how dynamically the coin-op stuff pulled us in, but was a fascinating time. So anyway, that's who I am. I'm Mark Hoffman, and I also have helped Walter the last couple of years since the first right after the first Icon, all the trading card stuff. If you've picked up trading cards or if they've been mailed to you, it's probably done by me. I write some of them, but I typically write the pinball stuff. Yeah, Nana's out there. That is David Gomez's wife. You know, us overgrown video game players and geeks, we really wouldn't be allowed to play video game if it wasn't for our wives allowing this, and Nan really allows a lot of it. It's pretty cool. But they have 2 kids being raised and embraced into this culture, and they have the Game Preserve down there in Houston, which some really cool people, some really connected people involved in that. So I think that they probably spend their weekends with the kids in a real, honest-to-God arcade environment, pinball machines, wide spectrum of games, and a huge audience. So Houston has it going on. Shout out Houston. Yeah, most people don't know I was involved in stuff. You know, I am not a showman. Like Billy Mitchell, he loves the show. He's putting on an act 100% of the time when he's interacting with the video game crowd. Walter has such a charisma and a patriarchal effect. You know, everybody feels like they know Walter as soon as they meet him, and everybody loves him because that's his shtick and his gig. But I was just a technical workhorse behind the scenes, and I'm not a person that has a strong need for public attention. So a lot of things that happen are behind the scenes. Well, I went to Banning, obviously, and spent an afternoon watching the frantic work being done at Twin Galaxies Live. For example, Jen's on here, and I saw her a couple of times, and until she sees me here, she probably didn't realize that she met me because she was managing the NFL players and that whole event. If you guys ever get a chance and they invite you into that studio, you should check it out. That's pretty crazy being able to go into a real recording studio, but these guys are working really hard. I mean, like fast-paced, frantic work all day long. And what's kind of surreal, they have a neat little, like a presentation studio, almost like a little movie theater back in the back corner. Big TV up front, and then they've got layers of seating. So we're sitting in there watching the Twin Galaxies live feed, and a guy walks in, you know, just a, I don't know, middle-aged businessman, doesn't look much different than somebody like me. Well, he's the NFL Players Association representative. Like, it's probably what it's like being on a movie set in Hollywood, and I've only been to LA once, which was this trip, but it's kind of crazy. You're in there and just things are happening. You have NFL players walking in, being interviewed. These high-level online gamers are in the studio. It's pretty crazy. If you're into gaming, boy, it's ground zero. I can guarantee that Twin Galaxies Arcade in Ottumwa was never anything on par with that. Actually, Twin Galaxies was a pretty modest place. It was just a little storefront, had 20 or 25 games. Not even the greatest games, because we just relied on Walter relied on a local distributor. I mean, about as exotic as it got was probably Star Wars. In fact, I can't even remember that Dragon's Lair was in there. Maybe it was, but I can't remember that. We went to a place called the Hole to Play in Ottumwa, which was a downstairs tiny little room that was slightly dangerous. So anyway, Twin Galaxies of the past might have seemed exotic, like when you see it on That's Incredible, but a lot of that was because Walter believed in it so much that he really hyped it, and he accentuated the positives and made them seem larger than life, which I guess is what the key to theater is, and probably why so many people bought in, because it's a suspension of disbelief. It's taking the ordinary and making it feel extraordinary, which a little bit of that is in the presentation. What do I have here? This scroll, so I might miss some things. Let's try to scroll up. I'm guessing this group right now doesn't want me to expound in detail about the dynamics of Robotron enemies and how to actually play it. You guys are probably, if you're up at this hour, you're probably pretty well versed with classic gaming. Of course, we have folks from overseas where it's the day. And if Gary Whittingham is on here, he's an Australian, and Australia's like 3 days ahead of us or something. It's like probably next week. I tried to get him on as a commentator, but I think maybe emails got crossed, Xander, and I didn't send an email to Jen last night, but hopefully he got on and commentated. I missed on that. Okay. The Mario Brothers champion says something about pictures. Get more info from Robert Childs. I don't know who that is. And then Robbie says Billy is that guy. He has an image. Yeah, I've known Billy since he was 17 when he came to Ottumwa, did all that stuff. And as a kid, I know Billy well enough. We can joke a lot. We've been in a lot of events, as kids, and then even lately. Billy was really that image back then also, except as a kid you believe your image. Now when you talk to him, and I'm sure you guys have met him, he's been to a lot of stuff with Walter. Now he's that same image, but he actually has a sense of humor with it. And if you knew him behind the scenes in his real life, he's a very sensitive, compassionate guy. Very, very compassionate and emotional. He's not that jerk that you see online, or maybe he was even believing a bit when he was a kid. And the elite nature of him playing, he was a really good player back then. His family had a restaurant. They knew other restaurant owners that had video games. So when kids like me were not eating lunch so we could get $1 for 4 quarters after school, Billy had full access, no minimum credits or no maximum credits to play and figure out games like Donkey Kong and Pac-Man. So when he came to Ottumwa, he was hardcore. Everything that you guys know about Donkey Kong, he had mostly known that. All of the little point pressing stuff, he had picked that game apart. So by 1982, he was no joke. And he knew how to do all the little nuance tricks, the crowd pleasers, like getting a fireball stuck, and a lot of little odd little nuances that he was doing, jumping backwards and getting points over stuff. It was kind of funny to watch, but he taught all of us that stuff. He was not a secret guy at all. He wanted to be defined as the best back then, especially with the Steve battle. If you know Steve Sanders, he's actually really cool. He's a lawyer. He's a family guy. Whatever persona you picked up from King of Kong isn't accurate. If you think he's not a super cool guy, he is. Kind of lost my train of thought there. Neo. Wish I'd talk to you more. Neo is the zookeeper power man, right? Neo Storm. David looks like he just started playing. There's an interesting thing about what they're actually doing. This is like watching elite athletes. I don't know if you watched American Idol the other night. After a guy had been accepted, Harry Connick Jr. wanted to race his friend. And the guy was an Olympic sprinter. So they do a little race, and then when you watch it, it looks like the Olympic sprinter is just jogging lightly, and he smokes Harry, and it looks like Harry's really working. But the sprinter just kind of jogged across the room. that's synonymous with what's happening here. These guys have been playing Robotron for 30 years, and they have focused their attention on it, so they are in full economizing mode. Whereas the average person or a learner might be a complete sweaty mess after playing the game for a half hour because you're just playing all out and you don't know how to economize. These guys have efficiency in every level happening. Efficiency in their forearm movements, efficiency in the positioning of the player, efficiency in understanding the complex chaos you see. They've got it organized, and in their brain they understand a hierarchy of behaviors that they have to do to make that chaos become organized, which is actually a forte of the human brain. We excel at this. We've been doing this forever in real life, taking chaos and organizing it and surviving. And that was a design element from, if you talk to Eugene Jarvis on it, maybe Larry can come on later. I don't know if Larry's out there, but Eugene can talk about that. They were physics buffs and science fiction buffs, and they wanted to create, through this minimal assembly language programming, they wanted to create and mimic the experience of real life, taking chaos and seeing if the human being could organize it. So that's what this is. This is the ultimate story of taking chaos and organizing it. Defender is also like that, but Defender is a free-form game where you can make a lot of decisions. This is the claustrophobic game. This is like taking Gladiator in the old Coliseum. Fighting it out. There is no escape from that rectangle. So what do we have here? Let me try to scroll up. Give me a hard time about scrolling. Keeps jumping on me. Okay. Stephen Boyer says, is it possible at all to have this tie-dye ROM actually keep scores up to scores in the 100 millions, or not possible? Well, like I said, I assume Larry will be on at some point. He's the programming genius behind Robotron. But I'm going to assume, based on the 8-bit nature of this infrastructure of the game, that probably isn't possible, because I know that the changes that he added, like unmasking the 10 million digit, which was an original mask done in Stargate, and adding that life counter, he did some clever manipulations to be able to have enough programming space to do that. And with what he did, he pretty much maxed out the memory even more. And the reason that I'm pretty confident that that's right is because he'd made some specialized splash screens and some alterations in the code, like changing the names of all the humans on the screens to match Steve Ritchie's family names. And those are all patches that he has. Well, one of the patches was a dedication to his parents, thanking his parents for what they did to be able to make it so he could become a programmer. And I asked if I could have that welcome screen put into my own version of the tie-dye ROMs, and he said there just physically wasn't enough room to add that in, unfortunately. So long story short, Stephen, I'm doubting it based on the 8-bit nature of the game. Scrolling up here trying to read the stuff. TGL request. That must be about Gary Whittingham. I'll send him an email in a bit. Try to scroll down here. These reading glasses are a new thing last year. I've discovered that I'm old and my eyes are relaxing. Pain. Oh, so Nan thinks that maybe Gary did get on? Great. He's a very funny guy. Nicaragon says 91 million. What's the world record for high score arcade? I don't know, and I see Steven asked if I verified a score in the past. So, to keep it real simple, the old Twin Galaxies, per the written rules, the game had a glitch in it, and so the game reset frequently. It was just the nature of it, and why that reset wasn't even understood programmatically until 1987, when Larry can tell you the story. There's a Canadian genius who got a ROM dump of Robotron from an arcade, and he surgically dissected the game, taught himself assembly language, and completely wrote out pages and pages of source code. Every line of code in Robotron he assessed. It's a feat that nobody's ever done since. Nobody's ever done to that level. And he talked to the Vid Kids, and they invited him to Chicago in 1987 when they both worked at Williams. And things were fixed. But anyway, the game in 1982, the game reset frequently. David's pushed it up to like 60 million. So Walter allowed marathoning scores to be cumulative scores. If the game reset or some technical thing happened or somebody shut the power off and had to restart, whatever happened, Walter would allow cumulative scores. So I don't really know. Oh, here, I gotta let the dog out. Come on, Pizzo. No barking. Where's Lady? Alright. Okay. So anyway. Yeah, this isn't an arcade, obviously, letting the dogs out here. What was I saying? So Walter allowed cumulative scores.
What's up?
And Walter also, because he was building community and building a scoreboard, he did not deny any scores. Scores would be phoned in. I worked at the arcade, so as an attendant, we took in lots of phone scores. We'd scribble them down on a piece of paper, and then later, when there were a pile of them, we had time, we'd go in the back room and type them in on the little index card program, little index card database on. It was a Model 2 or 3. It says in one of the video game magazines in an article about all the stuff we were doing. It actually says what model it was. It was either Model 2 or 3, I can't remember. So, the high score on Robotron. I don't know. The only thing that we can confirm as one credit scores, which is how the whole classic gaming world plays now on one credit, would be David Gomez at 125 million. And that's because he was playing on the 1987 ROM set that has that fix in there. The highest score that I'm aware of that is actually modern day confirmed, playing until the game reset, is 60 million. I think Ken House has made it to 40 million. But it can reset like on Wave 2. So it isn't like you have to play the game a long time. All you have to do is shoot an enforcer who's along an edge wall, and if you shoot him at an angle, it creates an angled explosion, because Robotron had some finesse in it. Like if you watch these explosions, you'll see some as they fragment, which came from Defender concepts, like Sam Dicker, I think, worked on a lot of that. But anyway, the explosions can be angled based on where they got hit, what kind of shot hit them. So that angled enforcer shot on the edge walls would trigger the code to try to call a section that did not even exist. The programming code can't go to a section that doesn't exist, so there's an overriding thing called a watchdog. Basically, it's a health factor. It's like, oh, something's really catastrophically screwed up. I don't want to just completely blow out and lock up, so I have to reset the game so it can continue. Which makes sense in a public coin-op environment. You wouldn't want the thing to just be frozen. You would want it to recycle itself. So I've seen reports of people getting reset at 20 million, before Wave 10, 60 million, 40 million. But did someone play 300 million, which is like, I'll do some math on that. Tell me, Steve, what do they say the high score is? is it 300 and what million? I'm gonna divide it by 4 and see how many hours that is. I see the 80 points question. I'm going to tell you a funny story here in a minute. Okay, let's pretend the score is 350 million just because I have the calculator out. I'm going to divide that by 4 million because that's probably about what you can get an hour, just real rough, probably 4.2. That's 87 hours. I only know of what George Lutz played a game where you could take 45-minute naps of Cubert and got to 85 million, and then that wild man with the great hair, John Salter, he took naps with his armor attack score on a frequent or whatever basis, and would he play 87 hours? So effectively, they're saying taking a game in 1982 that reset frequently, and then playing it without resetting the game for 87 hours, which matches what John Salter's done in modern day. It had to have been a cumulative score if that happened, and there was probably long breaks and then restarting games, and then probably a little bit of confusion about scores. Because remember, in the old ROM set, the score resets visually every 10 million points. So you've got to have a tally mark system to keep track of, what, 35 rollovers or whatever. That's a tough task. I gotta let the dog in. Hi, Bobo. Girl. I don't have any treats right now. Mom's gonna get them at Walmart. Can you get them more treats? We're completely out. The kids were feeding lots of treats last week. So the 80 score, 1982. Us kids, I was 14 in the arcade, probably turning 15. Summer of 82, I was 14 because I got a moped license, so it had to be in the right math there. We were all self-taught typers. It wasn't until 1985 where any of us would have taken typing, the formal old style typing classes in high school from the old typewriters that had the little, go went tight, like the old sounds like you see on TV. We had those kind of typewriters. So we were not formally trained. We were hunt and peck type keyboard people. And if you know Walter or have been around him, he's a notorious typer with 2 fingers. To this day, he types like that. He could type really fast, but he makes a lot of mistakes. Each sentence will have a mistake in it. And nowadays, he counts on autocorrect. So between 3 of us kids who were not formal typers, and Walter being a classic 2-finger typer, I think that 80 score was easily put in there, and it had to have been one of us kids. None of us were professionals. I mean, home computers were something that you saw in a storefront if your town was lucky enough to have an Apple dealership in the TV store. This was all new stuff. 348 million. Okay, let me put that in the calculator. Put that score, and I'm going to say 4.2 million. That takes it down to 83 hours. But you just saw that Dane Tulloch, who is somebody who's very physically fit, he's a marine biologist, he's a scuba diver, lives out in South Carolina, a beach guy. He said that his arms were killing him by 54 million points. So multiply that out. It would be tough. It'd be tough. But it doesn't really matter. That's history. Now all those things that happened and the scores and things being in Guinness records, that's just all historical content. So it really doesn't have much effect on this modern day stuff, what these people are doing. Another kind of cool thing is that Jay says that with this economy system being set up at Twin Galaxies where people do submissions, and if you become good at doing submissions and adjudicate properly, you get submission points awarded to you. And as those points build up, it allows an economy system to happen where things can be purchased, gifted. It's kind of like having virtual money in a virtual game, like Jetpack Joyride, where you can buy extra power-ups. He says that he's going to allow submission points to be used to buy interesting scoring tracks if the players so choose to do it. You know, if you're willing to spend your money on a scoring track and people want to play that way, then why not embrace it? Because this Twin Galaxies isn't going to be a 2-year stretch. This is going to encompass games that haven't even been created by probably game players or game designers that haven't even been born yet. So who knows where this is heading, this whole esports thing. But it's kind of cool we can buy scoring tracks. So I will make sure that I use my points toward getting something like this tie-dye 1-credit ROM set put in the score. So I do believe, and it's purely based on faith, that Twin Galaxies will afford every player who's willing to seek notoriety for their elite achievements. I do believe that there'll be an avenue for that. So I don't think there's any need to have any frustration over saying, oh, these guys are legitimate, that stuff wasn't, and these guys aren't getting their day in the sun. I think that in all due time, you know, there is no animosity environment or culture being created. This is all a celebration of everybody. If you go out, and there's a neat little blog article that just came out, I think Jace kind of pointed it out, maybe on Twin Galaxies on his Facebook page, but I was actually standing there when he got interviewed for that. Billy Mitchell was, all of us, we were, Paul Dean, the pole position guy, Mike Klug, because we were getting ready to go eat. It had been a long day. And this person, this blogger, wanted to ask Jace a question, and he gave the person his full attention and said off the cuff some really profound things. But he was saying, even if you don't like somebody's opinion, or, you know, he says it eloquently, you should go out and read it, they still need to have a forum, and you still have to, you know, it's part of the experience. And I think that's probably who he is as a human being. You probably could ask his mother and probably find out he was fairly compassionate even back then. So I don't see any need to have, social media breeds it, but, you know, the snarky stuff, the frustrations, the anxieties, the jabs, the underhanded stuff. That culture is not being bred here whatsoever. Hey, there's Mr. DeMar. That's right, he's in the Midwest too, so he's looking out the door, and it's just starting to become blue in the sky. We've got major snowstorms coming. I'm in Iowa, so I'll get them before Chicago will. But Larry, they actually had some questions. Stephen Boyer, do you want to retype that stuff? I don't know. He probably can't see. He can't see the prior chat if he just logged in. So anyway, one of the most revered programming people from that era, who is connected to a lot of the main programmers and the different cultures like casino games, pinball, and video games. Larry's here, so if you have some questions, I'll stop random yammering on about stuff and bring the expert in. Do you want to come on here, Larry? I can jump off of the Skype if you want to take over. Robbie asked if modern-day players could do that cumulative scoring. As far as our Robotron community, sure they could. But as far as motivation, I don't think you'd get anybody to do it, because I don't know of anybody that buys into a multi-credit cumulative scoring thing. Plus, Twin Galaxies changed the rules, and you'd have to probably talk to somebody like RTM to get the details about when or how. I don't know the full details. I think that during the Steve Harris era of Twin Galaxies, like maybe 1985, they changed the rules and got rid of the cumulative scoring for marathon games. But by then, stuff was already in the scoreboard, and it wasn't weeded out. So I don't know who you'd find that would play a cumulative game. I think you probably will see that David Gomez will see if he can push his 60 million reset score up. But, man, I'd be asking a lot to ask somebody to play for 80 hours with resets, because really there's no credibility in it in this day and age with the way people's mindsets are. Okay, so Larry's saying you would hang up, I would connect to you, then bring us both in. We'd both be on audio and it would show my video. Okay. You know how new I am at this, Larry, with Skype, so I'm going to click out of this. In fact, I'm borrowing the kid's iPad. It's not even my technology. I'm going to close out of this, Larry, and you can take over and then just tell me what to do here. Oh, and hey, by the way, this is the Defender Cup that I had from those guys. It's the Tato version. So Larry's got a super cool Defender one that he got from the Williams player group, Gary Whittingham in Australia. So I use this a lot, and the colors have held up well. I don't know where that came from in England. Gary should find out, but people that like Defender, there's a really good coffee cup maker out there in England. All right, I'm getting off here now.
There we're in. Okay. It looks like we're here. It's on a delay, so anybody who's in the chat, please let me know that you hear us. It looks like it's going to pop in our video in just a moment. We're on a delay, so it's always difficult at the start. It looks like we're here. Okay, I got to mute that. It's on a delay. This is like calling into a radio show. And you, can you turn your radio down, please?
Can you still hear me, Larry? I can hear you on my iPad, so I assume I'm in.
Yep. And again, and let us know that you can hear Mark also. I think everything's good. We are getting down to approaching the Goldilocks zone. Last night, I was doing some math on the two players. I'm so glad to see that Ken and David made it overnight and predicted that about 8 a.m. Chicago time, which is about 45 minutes from now, that David would be the first to roll over. And it looks like he's going to be a little later than that by my math. He's been running about 4.7, 4.8 million per hour, which, again, as I've been talking the last day, is just a staggering rate. My million points on Robotron takes 20 minutes, and these guys are doing it in 12 or 13, which is just RQ off the scale. When David and Ken each had this achievement last year, they were between 23 and 24 hours. And I think Ken was closer to 24, and I think David brought it closer to 23. As looking at the clock, we're going to be just past 21 hours when David finally rolls it over. I don't know if people noticed yesterday that the lead went back and forth multiple times between Ken and David. And since late afternoon, David emerged back in the lead and has been going and gaining, and Mark and I think Ken has been taking more breaks. We watched a pretty dramatic one about midnight Chicago time, about 7 hours ago, where I saw Ken had wound into wave 1, and his men ran down all the way to about 60 men. And I believe it's confirmed that Dane and Greg both stopped along the way. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah, I didn't catch the details, but I saw an email from Dane that he stopped at 54 million because his arms were killing him.
That's the physical ability to actually to do this is unbelievable. And again, I was showing a friend last night the game who had never seen Robotron or heard of Robotron, and fired it up last night, and I played 2 games. This was again late, and fought my way to wave 8 on the second game, and that was the best of the 2 games. And I think, and again, I normally play pretty well, but pretty well for me is again maybe going to wave 30, 20, 25, 30.
There's a funny YouTube video out there, Larry. If they look for it, it's the old interviews you guys did for one of those compilations.
Arcade classics. Yeah, the arcade classics.
Yeah. Eugene goes into great detail about how Robotron will completely kick your butt for a while, and then you can get ahead for a while, and then it'll get you back. So.
And that's the humans at large, okay? But for people to have the skill just to play with an advantage where they can earn men faster than they lose them is remarkable. But then you say you're going to do this for 24 hours, which means you need to be that much higher to take breaks, to have things happen, and then just up that amount of time and that much work playing the game. You're going to lose that edge. You got to be that far above it so that when you're playing at reduced capacity, you're still winning men faster than you're losing them. And it blows my mind. I was tired. I just slept 6 hours, and these guys are still going. I think it's going to be really interesting when an hour from now everybody crosses 100 million. And then it's going to be, okay, I'm not going to let go first. It's going to be an endurance contest. I can just see it. And
yeah.
we sort of know David's DNA towards what happens at 100 million. I have to believe he's going to gun to break the 125. And it'll be interesting to see how Ken reacts when that happens.
Yeah, I'd equated before you came on, Larry, that Jace Hall, who runs Twin Galaxies, had talked about how some of these elite gaming competitions, it's more elite than even like the moon landing. Some of these games, people have achieved challenges on them in smaller quantities than we've had humans on the moon. So really this 100 million thing right now on the brand new debut of the tie-dye ROM set, one of these 2 people is going to be Neil Armstrong and the other guy is going to be Buzz Aldrin. Exactly, and
we're waiting for some more rockets to launch to bring the next astronauts. It's pretty mind-blowing. I think somebody asked yesterday, and I don't know if there's anybody left listening. I'd love to hear more questions. That was really.
You have a question. Let me tell you who some of the people are here, Larry. Larry has really embraced this video game culture. While we were all playing games, he was in a lab working on computers and creating these games. So we were in different dimensions, even though a lot of us were in the same place. So Larry, Stephen Boyer is someone who's asking questions and commenting. He used to be an arcade referee for Twin Galaxies, and he's an elite Mario Brothers player, along with a guy you see out there, Maximum Steve, who has just crushed the world record on Mario Brothers. There's a recording of it out there, but it's playing at high level like this Robotron stuff. It's really crazy to watch the efficiency. Another guy here is a 28-year-old.
Who's the other guy besides Stephen Boyer?
Maximum Steve. His name's Steve Klesak. think he's in Florida. So another interesting kid here, one of the young kids that you really have to respect because they're going to take this on beyond where us old guys are, is Lakeman421. That's a 28-year-old guy named Robbie Lakeman, and he currently has the top Donkey Kong score. They took what Billy Mitchell was doing back in 1982 and put it to an extreme level, the same as what David and Ken are doing with Robotron here. And there are some other people here, but there's some pretty high-level classic gaming people listening to you. And Steven had a question. He wanted to know if you could... I've got to scroll up. Sorry, Steven, it's hard to see it here. Is it possible to have all this tie-dye ROM actually keep scores up to... It just jumped. Oh, there it is. Is it possible to have all tie-dye ROM scores in the keep scores up to scores in the 100 millions, or not possible? Or maybe just add a 1 digit at the bottom of the screen if it flips 100 million? Or change colors? Or give you redemption tickets?
That's a really interesting question, and it ties into something that other people were asking. One of the questions I got yesterday is, when the hell are you going to release this thing?
I hear that too.
It was created. I think I locked it down over Thanksgiving. I think that I finalized it. I was actually on a ski trip and made the final tweaks. Came back from the trip and who's the guy, the MAME freak who helped me figure out how to get the debugger and the emulator working?
Sean Riddle. Sean Riddle. He sees himself as pretty much the shepherd for Robotron emulation. He's dug it apart at the schematic level. He's studied with an electronic magnifying system. He's broken chips open, the blitter chips, and studied them at the per unit level of those transistor circuits, and he's the one that helped you do that. Sean Riddle is the reason that MAME emulation nowadays is so good. Right, and so Sean helped me get the emulator working so that I could verify that the booby traps were set properly. We had very crude mechanisms in the code to try and detect when the code was changed and to make the game crash in very sporadic, infrequent, and random ways to sabotage anyone who attempted to take the game, change the logo, and then produce it, which is what happened in a big way to Defender before that. Yeah, these guys might not know the history of just how big Defender was as a revenue source, or like your involvement in that project. So there might be a little background that some of these guys might not know, which led you to talk about booby traps for Robotron. Yeah, and I don't know that I want to go on about the history of Defender. There's a lot there you can Google. I worked with Eugene on the Defender project, and I guess it's. I need an appreciation because you just introduced 20-somethings that are playing classic games and setting records. So they probably don't know a lot about varied history. I love hearing. You were telling me Robbie Lakeman is 20-something and he's setting Donkey Kong records. 28, I think he said. You out there, Robbie? Yeah, their community is centered around a place called Donkey Kong Forum, who, interestingly enough, one of the less than 12 extreme masters of Robotron out there, one of them is a guy in Alaska, Jeff Harris. He plays in tournaments, but he set up this Donkey Kong website, and he's actually a really good Donkey Kong player, and it became the centralized location where these guys mainly are located. They do a lot of their talking from there, and they have their own little scoreboard they keep track of, but Robbie's at the top of it. So anyhow, Defender is the most successful game Williams ever did. It's probably in the top 5 or 10 of level of production. There were about 70,000 Defenders made, and the other games that I know in that stratosphere were Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Asteroids. There might be a few others, but
it could be number 4 all time because nobody, that there was a boom where video games were so big and they were going everywhere that the numbers were just crazy. And there might have been that many missile commands. I don't know if Mark, if you can think, or if you even follow the production numbers.
No, I'm not real good on that. Gary Whittingham would probably be able to know those details. We might be sleeping. Hey, I just pasted something from Mike Stroll. I actually have his cell. I wonder if I should text him. Have you talked to Mike, or does he know about this Robotron event?
I just saw the Mike Stroll post go by. I didn't read it. Is it in a thread? It is in a thread.
Yeah, I posted it here in the chat. Mike Stroll is the president.
I'm not seeing the chat. Something's wrong with my window. Hang on a minute.
Okay, well, while you're working on that, Mike Stroll was the president at Williams. He was the one that interfaced with the money people at Williams to get these projects happening. So Mike was probably like the leader of Ken Fidesna, who would have also been one of the key people that worked with Larry and Eugene. So there were these important people. Mike Stroll was pretty much probably the sole reason that pinball became a solid-state, electronic, chip-oriented thing, because he came from a background where he knew those skills, and he wanted to bring that to pinball. That was his forte. So Mike Stroll is actually huge in the history of gaming, even though you don't hear about his name. So he says, actually, the story is a bit more complicated regarding the name change with Robotron 2084. The name initially was Robotron 2084, and the artwork was started. Eugene called me and said that he would like the name to be 2084 Robotron instead. So, we did the art for 2084 Robotron. After the completion of the new art, Eugene called me again and literally begged for the name to once again be Robotron 2084, and promised he would not ever request name changes again. And since then, he kept his promise.
Yeah, and that probably fits in with his view, because he wasn't with Steve Ritchie every day.
Steve, I'm guessing, was pretty intense. He's so passionate and funny that I'm guessing that at work he was equally intense.
More than that. I mean, what you see was bigger than what you see, so that's absolutely true. I mentioned yesterday, I wish we had gotten Steve on here, and I bet he would have liked to have joined this and come on and talked, and it would be a perfect venue for Steve. For me, it's been a little frustrating trying to carry on a monologue without having just to watch for what people are typing, or trying to answer questions on a delayed basis.
Yeah, it is awkward, isn't it? We're not professional commentators by any means, and you kind of have to just kind of zone out, probably like these players, and just think of things to talk about, visualize stuff. It's a little different.
I struggled with it starting in yesterday morning. I had a great session yesterday afternoon. I came on at 11 p.m. last night, and nobody was asking questions, and I was kind of out of gas, and okay, I'll see you guys tomorrow. So. Yeah,
I think I did about the same thing at 9 Central. I was in bed probably by 9:15. I actually work in a software company, and we had a really bad couple of weeks. It was a very mental thing. But oh, hey, I see a message here that says Robbie Lakeman had 1,144,080 points on Donkey Kong. And a little aside here, Larry, since your forte is math and calculations, with the casino stuff and statistics, well, these guys in the Donkey Kong community have taken what you guys were doing, like with the Robotron quotients. They didn't really know about that, but they've taken it to a whole new level. They have a background program while they're playing, like this runs from their laptop, but they can elaborate. But it assesses every aspect of each maze they're playing through the 22 levels of the mazes till the game ends. Like, it gives them averages and statistics on everything so they can project out their final score. Because these players have finally achieved almost the maximum score potential they can get in that finite game, which is, it looks like it's topping out around 1.2 million. It's on everything so they can project out their final score. Well, that's weird. It kind of fed back there. You still
that was my fault. I had to restart the Twin Galaxies channel, and so it kicked the volume on. So that was another turn your radio down, Larry moment.
Man, it's so weird to hear my hillbilly accent, my southern Iowa, northern Missouri accent fed back. It's like, do I really sound like that? So anyway, these guys have pretty much maxed it out at 1.2 million. So now they're just trying to optimize everything. And it's like very efficient movements and calculated behaviors. They're picking it apart at a finesse level that's pretty hardcore. Most people would call that probably tedium infinitum, but these guys are really dedicated to it.
So I mean, I know Donkey Kong well. I understand that it is a finite game that plays to the end. I got there once. It was kind of like my Robotron story, where I dialed in, I played it, got to the end once, and then, okay, now I've done it, let's move on. Sort of one of the perils of designing a game that has an ending.
Yeah. And when you played it, your score was probably in the high 700,000 or the low 800,000 range.
I have no memory of the score, but it was probably lower.
Yeah, and these guys have taken that same exact game and turned it into, like, halving again their scores. It's pretty crazy.
Now, I'm trying to think about the game. I'm trying to think about the game as far as ways to run up your score. If you sit there and grab the hammer and club barrels, that would be a way to get more points?
Actually, there are little nuances. Like, you can get near the ape at the top on that final rivet, what do they call it, the rivet stage now?
Huh?
And you jump, and then if you push the joystick to the side, it will score points. And I'm sure that was an unintended glitch or feature by the coding people that did Donkey Kong. But these are all the little tips and tricks that the players have figured out ways around the code to get extra points. So if you jump near fireballs or barrels, it'll give you points. So they found all the little places that you can get extra points, and they will point press, what they call it, a wave until the counter is down to 0, but they're doing all these other little things to get extra points. Things the average person, or even somebody who might have reached the kill screen level, wouldn't necessarily have any awareness of.
And you say the counter down to 0, that's additional software that's somehow monitoring what they're doing?
Well, the counter, I meant the timer on the screen that counts down, and if you don't complete the level in time, it'll kill you. But they'll do other point optimization stuff right up to the point that the game would be killing them off because they were on that screen too long.
Got it. So are they're at a point where somebody has had the near perfect game and everybody's trying to get 10 more points?
Yeah, that's where they're at. They're at the threshold.
Yeah, that's so now they need to do what you're doing and create new tracks. I mean, I
think they actually do that. They play without. Now these guys are masters of it. They could explain it, but they play without using the hammers, or they'll try to get the highest points on the first maze. They have a bunch of little mini games within the game to keep themselves challenged.
All right, I'm looking at. Looks like David's at 96.6 and Ken is at 95.6, so they're about a million apart, which we know is about 13 minutes. And we still probably still have about 40 minutes left before David's going to hit it.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens after the 100 million, because both of these players have proven that they are tenacious beyond the average. And Ken had remorse for stopping at 100 million just because, it was the first time it had been done. And so he quit, and he thought about it, and he wished that he'd pushed it further, because then David, months later, did push it further to 125 million, and that's a lot of effort to get up in that score range. So I'm guessing that most
because it's easy to get the first 100.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like watching Usain Bolt in the Olympics. It's like, oh, that 100-meter sprint, that was nothing.
No, it's going to be interesting. Let me finish answering the question, which was, should we indicate 100 million?
Oh, yeah.
Because we wandered way, way away from there after I got started.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. This is at least good for you and me. I don't know if anybody's out there or listening or if this is worthwhile, but it's a good way to spend a Saturday morning. The issue is, when are we going to release this thing? And like any software you want to release, you want to make sure it's perfect, and you want to test the hell out of it before you let it go, which is just what we've done. This is the last beta testing. We found one thing that I would fix if I was back in November still screwing around with the game, which is when you roll the life counter, which I think David went and did for sport right after it was released, to say, let's do it, let's see what happens. And I think he created a new track, which was who can roll the life counter with the fewest number of points scored, or in the fewest number of waves, or both. So that's something for you to... Did you follow that, Mark, when he did that?
Not real close, not enough to remember the details, but I know that he's been messing with that life counter concept a lot, and I think he told me that he's got it down to where he can roll the lives from a fresh game in 17 million points, which if you do the math on that, it's he's dying like, only 1 point every 1.3 waves or something. It's pretty impressive.
Which is great. Obviously, if that number's over 1, life is good. And that will become a Donkey Kong-like contest where somebody's going to do it, in less points, and then it's just going to be, can somebody do it in 10 less points, and they'll be at the end of the line. So when you roll the life counter, you end up with the row of 7 men next to the score gets half erased, and even though you've got no extra men at that point, it shows something ugly graphically, and again, my conclusion is not to try and fix that, so we can actually get this released and out. And then the second element, is this change was not done in the way that we would have made the changes when the game was set up with the development system. And we could move code regions around and change code, and the ROMs are pretty full. What I did to make these changes, and I have an email which actually enumerates the changes, because I don't think we've mentioned what else is out there for when people get these ROMs. But this was done through patches, where you take and find a place in the code that you want to access. Overwrite in that part of the code a jump instruction that jumps you out from where the program was executing out to a spare area of EEPROM where you put the patch. And the spare areas of EEPROM are largely gone. And one of my missions in making this change was to change as few ROMs from the blue set as possible, so that people that had to burn real chips didn't have to burn 12 chips. And I think the tie-dye set is 5 chips, plus you have to also change chip 5 if you don't have the Christian Gingras patch, which is not otherwise affected by the tie-dye program. So
hey, Larry, there's a question here in chat, and I'm probably more versed at giving a political answer on that. So let me interrupt you for just a minute. M. Lenarden asked, will the tie-dye ROM set be a public release or offered through a fundraiser of any sort? The reality on ROMs, the main project has kind of taken the lead, and it's been around since the mid-90s. So with ROM sets, the public can legally own ROM sets. Like,
can I interrupt you a second? David is blowing off men, and it's again on a wave that ends in 9.
Oh.
Just for anybody watching, his wave counter is high, and his life counter is high, and he's obviously concerned about wrapping it. I saw this last night. I think I saw Ken doing it first, and then David, or maybe the other way around. And he's back to playing now. And for both of them go through this procedure on the grunt waves, the waves that end in 9. And I didn't. There must be some point or reason that they always do it in the waves that end in 9, and I don't see what it is. Unless maybe they can die faster when you're surrounded by more grunts.
That could be. You know, I've toyed with just letting it die off from MAME, and I can't find a difference between the average between 6 and 8 seconds per life killed on the various screens, but maybe they do have a little bit of strategy there. Or maybe they just want to start fresh, back at it with the brain stage as their next stage or something. I don't know. That'd be a good question.
That's interesting, because unlike some of these other waves with a lot of the enforcers and spheroids, 9s tend to not. Usually, they don't gobble tons of men like a 7 would do, or even an 8. I'm wondering if that's part of it. Anyhow, maybe they'll tell us one of these days. But I was wondering, why is he doing it on a 9? Is that relevant? And then when the other player had the same thing, and all I can think of is it's the fastest way, because with 100 grunts on screen, one's going to probably be closer to you that you can just run into. That's my theory.
Nan will have to ask David and report back. It'll be interesting if it turns out that it's psychological superstition.
Yeah. Okay, so I interrupted you.
Okay, so we were talking about MAME. MAME has taken the lead in how the hobby community deals with these ROM sets, which back in the 80s were licensed and, making revenue for real people. But nowadays, these things are fairly dormant, and other than some Xbox or PlayStation compilation releases, they're really not doing much. Warner Brothers owns the Robotron name, and I think that's probably so they'd have rights to do a movie around that if they ever wanted to, just in general. So
I don't think Warner bought it for any purpose. I think they acquired it when they got Mortal Kombat. When they got they acquired the NetherRealm, which the NetherRealm group now, out of the closing of Midway.
Interesting. I didn't know that history.
I'm guessing when they made that purchase, they decided, what else of value in the archives do we want? Or they just said, we want the game library with it. I don't know how it transpired, but it probably wasn't a purchase with an intent to do anything with.
Well, that's interesting. So basically, that kind of supports the fact that with the hobby community, these big fish out there that make money in media, they're not worried about what's going on the small hobby level, especially a hobby level that's making no money or interfering with their revenue streams. So if you have a real ROM board or you have a Robotron, you have a right to own ROM sets or updates to ROM sets. I guess it's kind of how MAME has got that worked out. So with this tie-dye ROM set, this isn't a paid thing. Larry's not making any money at this. Nobody is going to make money on this. So it can be a free download, just like all MAME ROM sets are. Like you could go out right now and get Donkey Kong or Mario Brothers or Missile Command, any of those emulated games. But the cost comes into play that if you're playing on a real arcade machine, you have to find a computer person that has a ROM burning kit and has the time and desire to burn ROMs, and then they have to have the physical medium, which is the EEPROMs. There is a guy in Canada, his name is Steph. He has a hobbyroms.com website, and he will burn ROMs for the hobby community, but you have to buy the ROMs or you have to supply them to him, and they're usually like $1 to $3 a piece, and then he will burn the ROMs for a cost. So that is a cost to get the physical entity, but the ROM set costs nothing. In fact, Gary Whittingham who is based in Australia, and he's a catalyst for bringing Williams fans together, Williams Electronics fans and players. He will post this up when Larry says it's go time, and then you can just go download it. And I've also posted on Williams Players Unite a very simple compiled version of MAME, to where you only have to download one file, unzip it, and you can play it on your Windows 7 or any Windows 64-bit computer. And the ROM set will just work nice and easy on that. So if you're a MAME player, you can do this completely free and easy, and you could even be playing MAME from your laptop right now in about 3 minutes if you downloaded the current file out there, but it wouldn't have the tie-dye ROM set. So there is no cost. This isn't a fundraiser. Larry is a professional. He's the president for a casino gaming company, but he loves the history of coin-op. He's embraced the players, and he has an affinity for what is probably a little bit like one of his children in the game like Robotron. So you have somebody that's a very busy guy who's a very professional, successful guy who is gifting you guys his programming skills, and that's pretty crazy. I don't know many programmers that you could talk to that would go back and touch a game that's 33 years old just out of the love of the game. So that's the context for what this is. This isn't a fundraiser, a Kickstarter, or any kind of donation thing.
Right. So that sets up a lot of things I can talk about related to it. In making these changes, I wanted to change as few chips as possible, because those with real games, it's a hardship to get chips from the shrinking supply. Although Mark made it sound like there are people that are selling them pretty readily. And then you have to get someone with a ROM burner, and then you have to go through it and replace the chips and whatever. The more chips, the bigger a production is. So I wanted to keep that down. The game, you know, and I didn't to contain the hours I would spend on the project. I didn't attempt to set the game back up in any kind of development mode. That would probably take at least a week of time, if not longer. I hunted down old tools that I had that could help me with the process, and then ended up with even cruder tools than you would imagine, doing all of the changes that I made by making patches to the ROMs. And to add another digit to the scoring, it really can't be done with any kind of reasonable patch. The scoring layout and all of the references to it in the large program are it's 4 bytes, which is 8 digits. So unmasking the hidden digit was easy with a patch, but adding a 9th digit becomes really problematic. So the next level that somebody suggested is, could you make an indicator? Could you put another mark? Could you? And again, where where you got the lives counter stuck in, we could put an indicator down there. And again, that's definitely beyond the scope of tie-dye. Maybe there will be another reason to go through the process again. And maybe when I'm a little older and not running a business and my kids are older and have more time on my hands, I'll go, hey, let's try and get all of the code back into a development mode where we can actually make, real programming changes and not just these subtle patches. So I'm ready to release, and Mark can let these out to the world anytime after today. This was the people testing it, and I'm grateful to several people that tested it on different versions of MAME in real cabinets and putting it through its paces. I decided when this event got on the calendar that let's have 4 people beat the hell out of these ROMs for this period through the event, and if we don't see anything that's a showstopper, we're going to release it with the Lives Rollover issue, which is just a momentary graphical thing, because the next time you die, it cleans up the screen. And then we'll see what happens going on. I don't have any plan right now in the short term to do more work on the game. This was this was work that accomplished something, and it's gratifying to see that that these 4 players were able to have this event around it. I'm going to try and pull up my list of things that we changed in the tie-dye ROM set.
Yeah. And while you're doing that, Larry, I see Neo Storm said, "Thank you, Larry." Neo is actually one of the brain trust there in the Twin Galaxies live studio. He plays games too. He's one of us. So I think that is significant in that Twin Galaxies is recognizing that Robotron is a very effective part of their electronic sports thing. I'm sure Neo knows a lot more about what the future is going to hold than he can share, or what we could even guess. But folks like Neo, they're the next leaders here because they're at ground zero. I might have been at ground zero at Twin Galaxies Arcade working on a Tandy computer, but people like Neo are ground zero in Twin Galaxies Live, which is something else.
All right, so I've got the list of tie-dye changes. Maybe I should actually I'm gonna put this in the chat. Well, actually, I'll go through it because we got to fill up some airtime anyways, and then I'll put it in the chat. Okay, so we've got the lives counter, the 10 millions digit. There were some things with the high score table. When you broke the high score table, is stored in non-volatile memory, and the non-volatile memory is scarce, limited, and actually only 4 bits wide for those who are computer programmers. So to store a byte in the non-volatile memory, you had to put 4 bits in one addressable byte, which is half of the byte, and then the other 4 bits in the next addressable byte, and then have all kinds of software to put them out separately and read them back and string them together. None of that had anything to do with the decision that the high score table was only 7 digits long, but each entry in the high score table is 7 digits. And when you scored over 10 million, it would put the score at the top of the table, even though in most cases it's lower than the next score below it. It would compare, let's say your high score on the high score table is 8 million, and you get an 11 million. The software goes, 11 million is greater than 8 million, put it in the number 1 spot. But then it would truncate the 10 million, and it would put the 1 million over the 8 million. And now with the high score table being out of order, bad things start to happen. So I fixed that. And the way I fixed that was when the score is over 10 million going in, it changes the score before storing it in the high score table. It doesn't change the score, but the score that it stores in the high score table is 9,999,999. And when a score is tied, the first guy in holds the higher spot. So now the way the high score table works, the first guy over 10 million gets the top spot for eternity because he was the first guy to get there. And then additional scores will go below it, and your high score table will stay in order. So that's a feature that is it's a fix to an ugly bug. I am the author of that ugly bug, as well as being the author of the ugly enforcer bug. So 33 years later, I can sleep better knowing that 2 bugs are fixed. The next one is extra ship settings. People wanted more granularity. So we can now set extra ships at 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, or 75K. And that lets you set it and can create more challenges and different ways to try and attack the game.
Side note on that, Larry, these elite players, what I'll call extreme masters, they are still not able to play really long games on the 50K bonus, where they're getting an extra player every 50,000 points.
Imagine that.
So that means that if you've bumped that up clear up to 75K, that you've added a lot of longevity. You've made a game that effectively can't be beat. Somewhere in there is the stopping point. So that you've really added a lot of value to the Robotron game long term. That was cool.
Are there any people that can play 50K men forever, or is that just...
No. I think you could define this group of people as best. Rick Gellert, who I was hoping would do some commentating, he's an extreme player, and he finally just reached wave 40 on the 50K bonus on difficulty 10. And David's the other guy that's done it. So they're really only two people. So the 50K bonus, that's more of a difficulty 10 thing. I should define that too. On probably difficulty 5, yeah, they probably can come close to marathon it. But if you do the math on it, that's sparse when you can earn only 33,000 points roughly a wave and sustain that. But you can only win a life every 50,000 points. You're about having to go two waves before you die to be able to keep that up. And somebody like David or Ken, they die about on an average 1.3 times they only die every 1.3 waves. They'd have to push that up to 2 to really survive it.
Okay, so the and again, it never ceases to amaze me how every time you think you've seen it all, somebody comes and gets better. So maybe we need one of these 20-somethings who's got just a little sharper reflexes to get their experience level, and who knows. But anyhow, there's more options, and then with the new settings in between 25 and 50, that gives the community a way to kind of push it. Okay, let's set it to 30 and 10. Let's set it to 40 and 10. And maybe see if we can conquer that if 50 is not attainable at this point. I put in a thing when we saw Ken break 100 million the first time. The whole community, including myself, live on Twitch, realized that Robotron has the same Goldilocks zone that Defender has at 990,000.
And they probably don't know what that means, Larry.
So at 99 million 975,000. At 99,975,000, you enter what has been named. Who created the term Goldilocks mode?
It comes from some novel, I believe, where it's talking about the habitable Earth planets.
Right. That's a common scientific reference.
Simon Grant is an extreme Defender player from England. He's on the Williams group. He played Defender using a pause button in a Flash version to see how long he could do it, and so his story write-up, he referenced the Goldilocks zone every time he'd go through this math conundrum with the ships. So it was actually Simon Grant, I guess you could peg it to.
Okay.
Anyway, so you were explaining what it was.
So this is something well known in Defender, because when you hit 1 million on Defender, which happens in a much shorter time than 24 hours, the program, which is keeping track of when your next free man is, wraps that value. So you just crossed 990,000. It adds 10,000 to that and gets 1 million, which in 6 digits rolls the counter. And internally, the program sets that the next free man's going to be given at 0. And then you hit the next lander, which is 100 points. Your score is 99,975,100. And it goes, is that bigger than 0? Yeah, give them a free ship. So you get a free ship, and now it adds 10,000 to the next free man score, and it decides, okay, now your next free man is at 10,000. You hit another thing, it gives you 100 points, figures your score, goes, that's bigger than 10,000. So every scoring event, which is literally everything you shoot, awards a free man. And these free men are not free, they're just in advance on the men you would have earned at those scores.
Evil design.
And it's not a design, it's a bug.
Yeah, but it's evil.
It's an evil bug. we didn't know about this, and I love the thinking about the way it happened, because when Defender was out in the first few months, 100,000 was really the brass ring. You know, if you were a Defender superstar, you could get to 100,000. And it took 6 to 9 months for the proficiency of people and to get their brains wired and to get the skill of the game and to learn the nuances for that score to move up. And we watched particularly a guy named John McHugh, who played in Chicago, mostly at Silver Sue's Arcade up in it's early in the morning. What's that part of town called? Northern Chicago. I'm going to grab a glass of water. I'm just running out of voice. I'll be right back.
So he's referencing a place called Silver Sue's. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a hot spot for the developers. You know, you had Midway and other coin-op places there in Chicago. So this was a gathering spot where games were tested, where people hung out and collaborated. It was quite an important focal spot. There isn't enough written about Silver Sue's. There are a couple of historians out there trying to gather info, and you can find some pictures. But if you wanted to be at the most happening spot in America at the most happening time of coin-op video gaming, you would visit Silver Sue's. It was a big deal.
I'm back, and I don't know, Mark, if you can see your Skype, but you were asking about this yesterday. My beautiful Robotron Gauntlet mug, coffee mug, is at my house rather than at the office. So when you asked me to get it yesterday, I had to get my Defender mug, which you also sent me. But
yeah, and Gary Whittingham, he was the mastermind behind that. I was just the easy shipping.
So appropriately, I'm trying to get my voice back using my Robotron Gauntlet mug.
Well, while you're sipping some stuff, I'll talk about that Robotron picture you see there, and that's posted out on the guidebook if anybody wants to print that out. But there is a hobby classic gamer in England. His name's Dan Turrell. He's actually in Lichfield. He embraced this whole classic stuff about the time we were talking Defender and Robotron and getting together under Gary's site. And he happens to be a really talented artist. He can draw about anything. So he started doing fun stuff, like we wanted to do a Defender t-shirt. So he drew up an image, and we did some Vistaprint t-shirts. And then he's continued to do things, and he's received notoriety because he started drawing portrait images and just like old arcade sketches for Walter Day's trading card project. So all of a sudden, Dan went from just being a Defender and Robotron fan to having notoriety in the classic gaming and coin-op community through Walter's trading cards. But Dan has done things like that Robotron picture that you saw on Larry's coffee mug. He didn't charge for that. I did send him some Wicco sticks to help cover it. But he's done all of this really neat artwork to just help bring the fun of it. It's just fun. It adds another layer of interest to it. Everybody needs a crazy artist, and back in the Williams days, that would have been Constantino Mitchell, which they call Connie, or Python Angelo, who was a complete mad scientist, amazing person. So Dan has filled that role. He's pretty much our artist and does all these neat things, and he doesn't charge for them. So he's quite a saint, and he's a cool guy. And he does sell artwork. He'll do stuff on commission, and his main forte